Welcome to Devotions with Dave. I'm Dave Michael. I'm coming to you from my office in front of the Space Invaders wall, and I want to share with you a devotion today from Philippians chapter 1. My recommendation to you is that you read Philippians 1 before you watch this video. I'm going to refer to things and assume that you'll already be familiar with the chapter. Let me first start with a background, a little bit of Philippians. And let me start by saying, if you're interested in more, a simple Google search on, Introduction to Philippians or something to that effect should give you all sorts of extra material. But basically, the book of Philippians, as we call it, was a letter that Paul wrote to the church in Philippi. Philippi was in Greece, and it was a church that Paul had visited on one of his major missionary trips and helped start the church there. And so now he's in prison and he's writing to his friends there. A lot of times when Paul wrote these letters, like in the case of the Corinthian church and others, he wrote in response to problems. And so he was addressing issues. In the case of Philippians, there's no problem. He's just writing because he cares about them. He helped start this church. He knows the people there, and he just has great concern for them. He's writing with Timothy, and you can tell as he writes this that he mentions his prison time, his persecution time, his struggles, and he kind of uses that as part of the lesson that he teaches. So this is I'm going to be focusing today just on the first part, verses 3 through 11 of Philippians chapter 1. This is basically how Paul's prayer and love for the people there, and he talks about this. And so it begins with Paul saying that whenever he thinks of them, he prays for them. It's like, when I think of you, I pray for you. And when he prays for them, it is with joy that he prays for them. He thinks of them, and he just wants to pray for them. And I thought about this. And I know sometimes we can almost feel like prayer can be a duty, an obligation. I have a list of things concerns. I know I'm going to pray for them. And sometimes we might struggle to think, what should I pray for? Or I've got to finish this prayer almost to get it done. With Paul, it wasn't like that with the people from Philippi. And I thought about this. I thought, think about someone that you love very much and they're in need. I know when, my daughter's been in the hospital, or there's been other really great needs of friends of mine that are just really serious. Whenever I think of them, it just makes me want to pray. Like, I think of them, I'm going to pray. And like Paul says, it brings him great joy. Like, I'm eager to pray. If I think of them, I want to pray, because that means I'm talking to God saying, God, will you intervene in this situation? Will you do something good? Will you stop the bad? And so it's not like I guess I got to do that prayer thing. It's not like that at all. It's like, I just want to do it. That's how Paul was with the people in Philippi. He loved these people. When he thought of them, he prayed for them. And when he prayed for them, it brought him great joy, because he knew God was going to do great things then as a result of that. And there's several famous verses throughout, famous in that often quoted, well-known from the book of Philippians. And we reach the first one here in this first section in verse 6. And basically, Paul, after he prays for them, he says, God who began this good work in you is going to continue it until it's finished. And that's an encouraging word, because I know there's sometimes we think, am I really growing? Am I just sort of stuck where I am? Can I not overcome sin better? You'd think I'd be better. And Paul's like, don't worry. God started this work in you, and he's going to bring it to completion, because that's how he works. Very great, very much encouraging. So we see that Paul genuinely loves these people. And he goes on to say, it's right for me to feel this way about you. It's not bad. This is right that I feel this way about you, and I'm going to tell you about it. Because of his connection with them, it's obvious. He was responsible for helping many of them come to faith and the church leaders to take over, and he cared deeply for them. And so he prays a specific prayer for them, which I want to kind of go over the pieces of this. And he says, first he prays for their love to overflow more and more. And I've always liked that. If you remember, I've quoted that verse in different messages of mine over the years, but that their love would overflow more and more. Isn't that a great thing that could happen to us, a great thing to pray for others? Imagine if your love would increase and overflow more and more. Think about what that would do to you. Think about how you would interact with people. That'd be such a wonderful thing. And the second thing he prays for them is that they would grow in knowledge and understanding. And I know that's many of us, like we want to know more, but we also want to understand more. Knowledge is good, but understanding with it is even better. And, in this time of the COVID-19 crisis, we might have a lot of knowledge about the virus and how it spreads and how you can be asymptomatic and how maybe you'll have antibodies for a time, but then you could get it a second time. Well, that's all knowledge, but the understanding, what does that mean? It means that we're in a tough place and people need the Lord, and I need to rely on the Lord. So there's knowledge and understanding go together. The third thing he prays for them is that they would live pure and blameless lives. So this comes down to behaviors. Like, I want you to have the love that flows. I want you to have knowledge and understanding, but then I want you to live a pure and blameless life. What a great prayer that you could pray for someone. And then the fourth thing is that they would be filled with the fruit of salvation, which he says is righteous character. That the fruit of having a relationship with God is that your character becomes more righteous. Wow, what a great thing to pray for. And then finally, that all this would bring glory and praise to God. Right? So if you're praying for someone and you're not even sure what to pray, think back to Philippians chapter 1. What a great prayer, what a great thing to pray for people that you care about. And of course, if you know someone in their situation even more specifically, you could pray for that, but these are great things to pray for. So a few observations I had as I read this. It seems as if Paul is getting kind of nostalgic and sentimental for his time at Philippi and with the church there. And he misses his friends. He remembers their initial faith and their joy at coming to know the Lord. He wants that to grow, and he wants to kind of be a catalyst to spur that on. We can see that happening here. And, I think being apart from people, like Paul knew these people from Philippi, and then he moved on, and he hadn't seen them for a long time. And I think when we're apart from somebody, from people that we love, that you feel this way towards, I think it can be really hard. And I think we can all relate a little bit to this because we've been mostly apart for about a month now. I think about the people of Stepping Stones, and I think about, the great times we've had together, the things that we've done, how good it is, when people are in the lobby and sharing stories, and after church, how everyone's talking and sharing about what's going on in their lives and what the Lord's doing. It's just wonderful, and I get that. I have those feelings for the people in the church, for my family. I will say it was wonderful at our Easter online Zoom service that my daughter Shambra and my sister Janet and brother-in-law Tom were all able to join us. I haven't seen them for a long time, and it was wonderful that they could be a part of it. And, there's many other friends. So we can relate to that. We have people in our lives whom we love who we might feel like them to where that Paul does. There's people we love. We've had great times together, and now we can't see them. And so that got me thinking. And so the takeaways from this part of Philippians 1, when you're feeling isolated, and many of us are like that now, let those feelings inspire you the way they did with Paul. He didn't write them a sad note of, we can't be together. He says, I remember our great times together, so I'm going to pray and pray for God's best for you. Like, let that inspire you the way it did Paul. Whenever you're missing the people, pray for them. And if you don't know what to pray for, you can use Paul's prayer. It's perfect. That their love would overflow more and more, that they would grow in knowledge and understanding, that they would live pure and blameless lives, that they would be filled with the fruit of salvation, which is a righteous character, and that all of this would bring glory and praise to God. So, as I wrap up my Philippians 1 lesson, I want to talk about the key verse. And in this section today, from verses 3 to 11, I feel like the key, I almost went with verse 6 because that's the famous one, that God who began a good work in you will bring it to completion, which is a great verse. But I felt that verse 3 really captured what this whole thing was about, where Paul says, every time I think of you, I give thanks to my God. And when we think of the people we love we can't be with during this time, I pray that it would make us just thank God for these people in our lives and then want to pray for them. So, my desire is that has always been that your association with stepping stones is going to cause you to give thanks. That when you think of stepping stones, you'll think of the things that God has done in your life through the church. That you'll think of the people in the church who have lifted you up and encouraged you, and who you now can't see, and will cause you then to give thanks to God for them and pray for them. And so, as we wrap this up, let me just say this letter of Paul's to the book of Philippians has a very upbeat, optimistic tone to it, and you really sense that even in this first section, and that continues throughout. And my prayer is that as you read it, as we study it over these next few weeks, that God will lift you up, fill you with thanks and praise and joy. All right, so that was Devotions with Dave. I pray the Lord will be with you. Keep social distancing, keep washing your hands, don't touch your face, and find ways to reach out to one another to lift them up. And when you're feeling isolated, give thanks to the Lord for the people in your lives and what they've done. Until next time.